The time is now 5:01. Good evening and welcome to the January 28, 2025 Policy and Governance Committee meeting. I am Dr. Felton Moss, the newly appointed chair of the committee and District 7 board member. I'm truly honored to serve in this role, and I really look forward to working with the committee as we enhance and develop board policies to govern our school system. Ms. Adley, could you please call the roll?
Dr. Moss,
Present.
Mr. Briggs,
Present.
Ms. Buller-Strother,
Present.
Ms. Walker,
Present.
Mr. Jackson. Yeah, we have a quorum.
With the quorum present, the Policy and Governance Committee will come to order. The chair wants to inform the public that that agenda items 4.1, policy administration of bronchodilators to students, and 4.2, student telehealth appointments have been removed from the agenda for tonight's meeting. This allows the administration additional time to review and refine these policies based on newly received guidance. Further discussion will be necessary to ensure the policies comply with legal requirements. If there are no objections, the committee shall adopt the January 28, 2025 meeting agenda as amended. Seeing that there are no objections, the question is, shall the committee adopt the January 28, 2025 meeting agenda as amended? Any discussion? Ms. Adley, please take a roll call vote.
Okay. Dr. Moss,
Yay.
Mr. Briggs,
Aye.
Ms. Buller-Strother,
Aye.
Ms. Walker,
Aye.
4 in the affirmative.
There are 4 in the affirmative. The January 28 meeting agenda is adopted as amended. There being no objection, the January 28 meeting has been adopted as amended. If there are no, we'll now move to approval of the meeting minutes. If there are no corrections, the committee shall approve the January 14, 2024 meeting minutes. Are there any corrections?
I just did have a question. I can bring it up later. Ms. Adley, did you have a chance to go back, not to the one you sent me, but to the latter part of the transcript? I
Yes,
sent
I
an
did.
email about it. You might not have gotten to it. What did you say?
No, I said yes, I did. I also did a search to see if any conversation about the number 1 was brought up, but nothing came up in the transcript.
Okay, thank you so much.
Are you good, Board Member Walker? If there are no further corrections, the committee shall approve the January 14, 2024 meeting minutes as corrected. There being no corrections, the January 14, 2024 meeting minutes are approved. At this time, we'll now move to public comments on relevant agenda items. I just want to remind you, to our public commenters, you've been registered to speak in a public comment forum where the Board of Education will listen to your comments. The board will not address your comments. You will have 3 minutes to make your presentation. Registered speakers may not relinquish any part of your speaking time to another registered, unregistered individual. Speakers may not address individuals or issues with profanity or derogatory terms. You will be warned once. If you continue, your comments will be muted and you may be removed from the meeting. Speakers are encouraged to use their titles rather than names. Example, principal, superintendent, etc. Your adherence to these guidelines will enable the public participation process to move swiftly. I believe we have one live speaker this evening, Beatrice DeJager, which is a student speaking on behalf of PGCPS compliance with Maryland Senate Bill 427.
So as of right now, I don't see the student in the waiting room. I don't want to give him a few minutes. I could try to reach out.
I think it's appropriate to give 1 to 2 minutes. We'll see what's happening here.
Chair Moss, sorry to interrupt. I'm gonna log out and log back in. I'm having an issue with my camera, so I'm gonna log out and log back in.
Got you. I believe it's going to cause a quorum issue, so we won't proceed until board member Vice Chair Jonathan brings us back.
Committee Chair Moss.
Yes, sir.
I believe Lolita E. Walker is still present. Her camera is just off.
Okay.
Yes,
cool,
I'm
cool.
here. I thought we
Proceed
were waiting on
then.
a student. Sorry about that.
Oh no, you good, board member Walker.
Okay, if we're not still waiting on a
Cindy,
student, I can.
is
keep
the
my
student
camera on.
arriving? Is there an update on the student?
I believe she's speaking with the student right now. I can hear her on the phone.
Proceed, board member Walker.
Thank you. Just let me know. I'm like right here, right here.
I got you.
Okay, apparently it didn't help. So um so yeah, I'm probably just gonna be in this black screen, but I'm off camera technically, but it's not showing my face.
You're good, Vice Chair Briggs. We are waiting on the student who's doing public comment.
Thank you for waiting. So I just spoke to the parent and she said that they were trying to register for the board meeting and just click the link that was open.
Okay, well, we'll proceed with our agenda. Looks like we don't have a public commenter for tonight. We'll move to item 3.0 and then 3.1, which is our legislative update. The chair recognizes Ms. Welch for the legislative update.
Good evening. What I thought we could do is, Cindy was gonna put the spreadsheet up on the screen, and then we could go through several of the bills, that you know, just to discuss, and we'll be coming up for hearings, probably, not bills this week, but like looking at bills for next week or the week after. We'll discuss numerous bills, and then if you have any questions, we can, you know, you can ask the questions as we go along. So Cindy, if you don't mind, if you're available, if you could please put the spreadsheet up so that we could just scroll through it.
Hey, Robin, just a quick reference here. I know board member Boozer Struthers also wanted a copy of like the MABE one. Do you mind dropping the MABE one in?
The one that was the other day,
know
yes,
what-
I can put that in. Yeah, I mean,
Do you have it already, board member Boozer Struthers? Or do we need to drop it? Okay, I got you.
I have this, I have the PGCPS file. I'd have to look to see if I received the MABE file.
Well, I don't have that one either, so I'm gonna download it too when it gets dropped. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
so do you want me to email it to you, or what, tell me what you would like me to do? I don't do
Just in
it.
the chat is fine. Oh, we don't have a chat. Okay. Email, thank you.
Yeah, we'll need an email. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Robin.
For some reason it's not coming up for me, so no, it's right here, but it's just not doing what it's supposed to do. I don't know.
I'm fine if, Board Member Boots or Strother is fine not to have it at this particular time while we review this. So we
Yeah.
can
Oh,
maybe
okay,
move
Yeah,
forward.
okay.
Let's move forward.
Okay, I'm sorry for being so slow. I just finally was able to access it, but yeah, I will, as soon as I get done talking, I'll send it to you. Anyway, if Cindy, do you mind scrolling down to the very end first and we could talk about local bills? So we have several bills that actually the Education Committee for the delegation is meeting on Thursday morning, and they definitely would like to know where we stand on two of the bills. And one is House Bill 359, and the other one is House Bill 379. So I'm going to talk about both of those bills first. I'll go to 359 first. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna pull mine up so I can actually read it. So in that particular bill, but the bill's requiring that, and this is 359, Prince George's Early Childhood Education Program, high school child care centers, and fee and child support cases. So this bill requires that a child care center, along with the CTE program and early childhood, be established in every high school where there is pregnancy rate greater than 1%. And if there is not sufficient room for a particular high school for that program, then PGCPS will be required to provide transportation for any student that would have been going to that school to go to another school where there is room. And although there is a provision for funding, it says the governor must put in 500,000, I think. And then there is also what they said is that the fees they collect, they get $10 a child support case, the county does, and any fees that they collect for the child support cases, they would then turn them over to the county to help the school system to help support this program. But basically, we have opposed this bill, and of course, this is your opportunity also to share what you're thinking on this. And the reason being is, it's very unlikely that if this bill goes forward, that the money that the governor's supposed to add to it will stay there, because there is no money to put there. So I have a strong feeling that funding piece will disappear, as well as we do not have any clue. We were not provided with any information about what kind of money we're talking about for this $10 a person for custody cases, like in terms of how many custody cases do they have, and how frequently we'd receive the money. But even still, to put those kinds of programs, CTE programs, in each of the high schools, the cost, in terms of setting up classrooms, adding additional staff, and then on top of that, CTE is a program that is approved by the MSDE, and they are pretty particular about how many programs they'll allow any school system to have in any particular subject area. And to be quite honest, the child development program is probably, of all the CTE programs they have, is probably their least favorite program. And the reason being is because they're very into all the STEM programs and all the different options that they have available. And so number one, it is financially, it's a mandate that would not be unfunded practically, and I mean minimally funded, if at all. And the cost would still be astronomical for us to be able to do it. Just even working out the transportation cost would be a whole nother issue. And then on top of that, do we have to deal with the fact that our legislative platform says that we will oppose any programs that are saying that PGCS will be responsible for activities or programs outside of instructional responsibilities. And if you look at the information that's provided about the bill, the whole purpose of the bill is really to provide childcare support to student parents and childcare support to students who are pregnant or parents, and that they'll have this successful childcare on the campus. And then we can be supporting them in terms of their both their schooling and their parental responsibilities. And so, and because childcare is a substantial burden for families, this would be very helpful for them. However, especially in a year where our focus is hoping that we'll have enough funding to meet all our instructional demands, this is not something, that I think the system could really afford to take on at this point in time. Our a Division of Academics definitely does not support this bill, both from a funding standpoint as well as from the response of that when we're looking at programs. And if you really, I guess another reason to oppose it is that there's really the school system's decision to determine which, instructional programs they want to have available for the students and what they want to put in place. So unless you think differently, that is why we oppose for that particular bill.
It looks like we have questions from, I believe, Board Member Walker first, and then Board Member Boozer Struthers. So at this
Opposite
time, we'll entertain
direction.
questions from Board Member. Oh, I'm sorry, I was wrong. Board Member Boozer Struther, and then Board Member Walker.
No, thank you, Board Member Walker. So this bill has some origins in my district. As many of you know, Delegate Taveras and I overlap a map, and as when she was County Council member for District 2, we were fully overlapped. So we share a lot of the same sort of PGCPS sort of data because of that, the set of schools here. So Northwestern High School has an official daycare center facility that was built into the building when it, 25 years ago, and a very successful early childhood CTE program along with it for the last 20 years. But what happened a couple of years ago is a budgeting decision was made under the previous superintendent to close the daycare because essentially PGCPS started funding it. Like it had been funded by federal or external sources. And that daycare actually served, I believe, PGCPS staff and community by that point. I think at one point in time, it did serve students who are parenting their infants in an infant program. So what Delegate Taveras, the need hasn't gone away. That daycare was the only daycare in the entire area, my area of the county, that served developmentally, children with developmental disabilities. And some of those children are now part of PGCPS's special education program. So it was a big loss to us. And so I think, I just want to give some context that we lost a resource, a much needed resource in this area of the county. So that's some of the historical origins. I tried for a couple of years to push about reopening this daycare in some way. The CTE program has diminished because we lost the in-house daycare. The students had to find external credit hours at daycares around the region. I mean, it's a little more complicated than it seems around the CTE program. It was a sold out program when there was a daycare in the building. I believe Northwestern High School is changing its CTE priorities, and will be changing. Change happens. I could go with the flow as a board member. But what I was worried about was this daycare facility could also have been a pre-K approved facility. And you know how hard those seats are to find right now in our county. We're not getting the money yet. So my next step was, let's at least see if this could be pre-K4 for Kerwin. And it doesn't look like we're headed that way. So I just want to say to Delegate Taveras that the oppose is for good reason from this administration and board. We do not have the facilities to do daycares in our high schools. We barely have enough room. So, but we have a problem to solve. So I hope we can continue to work with Delegate Taveras on solving the problem of the need, even if this bill is not the bill this year, because we have a lot that we're going to be challenged with all collectively about the students and the school communities that she cares very much about, that we all care very much about. So that, so I do want to make sure we say to Delegate Taveras, we're not putting aside the problem. So I have more of a statement than a question.
Thank you, Board
Thank you.
Member. Thank
Oh,
you,
I
Board
was just
Member
gonna say, no, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. I just want to say thank you, though. That's helpful. I mean, to have that whole picture there. So we make sure we include that.
Yep, I believe Board Member Walker had a statement or a
Yes,
question.
I did. Thank you so much. You know, thank you for saying that, Board Member Boozer Strother, just for context and background for each of us on the phone. I would love to propose a next step, and I'll give this to the chair, of us touching base, or you touching base directly with Delegate Taveras, because this isn't the first time that she's talked about the need that's inside of her community. And I think it would behoove us to one, talk to her directly to help her understand, especially with the Educate Advocate Act together. And then Ms. Welsh, one of the things, and I'm saying this out loud because I know at some point it'll come to a motion, but also Ms. Welsh, I'm hoping that you kind of outlined about 5 to 8 rationales as to the opposition. And I think we can help to frame that with whoever does go to chat with her. And that proposal would be the chair or vice chair, and definitely the representative that is in her district would be really, I think, appropriate to sit with her. I also was going to say that when we have PG bills, we also don't just solve for an area of the county. It's looking, holistically. And as we look at the deficit that we have, not only that, but also our uninhibitable buildings that we're looking to reconcile, as well as the money that we've got to pour into that and reallocate throughout. It is a tough road. So really helping to understand the problem and the need, and sitting with her so we can maybe brainstorm some things as we go forward in other legislative sessions might be, advantageous for not only this bill, but she has another one too that I'm sure we'll talk about today. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Walker. Vice Chair Briggs.
All right, thank you so much, Chair Moss. I just want to say that I think my colleagues captured what I wanted to say. I think the essence of it really, the pushback obviously that we don't have the space right now is for sure we need to make sure that we implement something like that thoughtfully, and that it's also built into our schools in a way where they're receiving it and they're excited about it versus it being a burden. I do see the benefit of having programs like that in our schools and being able to really support community needs in a I think a really effective way that can help to, again, attract more families to our school district, make it an appealing place to stay. And I think ultimately that'll benefit us in the long run. I'd love to, maybe the task is, in addition to what Board Member Walker and also what Board Member Boozer Strother said, is that I would love to just maybe think about other other states, other counties, other areas that have kind of implemented programs like this, or integrated these types of things into their schools in a way that was effective, so that we're not starting from scratch. Because I feel like that's one of the things where it's like a lot of these legislators are already strapped for time. They're just trying to figure out what's the answer, what's the solution. And I wonder if we can come with a solution that we've already had a chance to talk to experts who've done the work and we're not trying to think it up, then that could potentially be the path forward, or at least a more appealing bill that could get some votes, and also is something that has the buy-in from our office. So I just wanted to add that in there. Ms. Welsh, I know that this is really more for the chair, but I also think for you, Mrs. Welsh, because I know you have a lot of contacts and colleagues who are experts in different districts and would just love to tap into that kind of that wisdom and knowledge and expertise you have.
Thank you, Vice Chair Briggs. I just want to about this, and I think this is really great work. It's just the timing of it in terms of where we are with funding. It's really a unique challenge for us. I wish there was another category of not opposed for this. I talked to Delegate Taveras yesterday about this. I think this is the right work. I think the timing might be off. I'm obliged, and I see Board Member Walker, your hand is up, to not even oppose this, but to not even taking a position around it, given the nature of this is a concept that we actually support in theory. But when we look at the funding challenges we have, it makes it really difficult to do this without having the additional funding to do it. And then there are some other ways to do it. But Board Member Walker, I want to make sure we'll do a second round. That seems like that's in order. Board Member Walker.
Thank you. I think for this one, we do have to take a position. That's my position. For this specific one, I think that we can tailor it and even give testimony on behalf of it, so we can give some context to the opposition, which is the bullets will help from Ms. Welsh for that. Because one of the other things is not only space and funding, of course, but it's also the CTE piece. And I know that there's some education around that, because there's been multiple questions on why we can't have CTE at all of our high schools. And Dr. White was on a call just today, like talking and educating folks on that. So I think that there's some education we can do around it, but also when we talk about funding, when we talk about opposition of bills that's core to our PGCPS legislative platform that we've voted on, then those are around curriculum and things like that. So I think the point is we can educate at the same time and maybe have this balance where, hey, we're opposing this for these reasons, but we're really hoping to sit with you and talk about what can be possible as we look for other bills in order to meet the need of the population to which you're referring to. That's one thought.
Thank you, Board Member Walker. Board Member Boozer Struthers?
Yeah, I mean, as an unfunded mandate, I do think we need to oppose. I mean, there's just been like so many of these unfunded mandates without like the deep, knowledgeable discussions that have included this board and the experts in our system. And I think we need to have a different relationship around this. So if we don't oppose, we're going to keep getting these bills that, you know, have like this one, of course, I think is very good intentions. And of course, our early childhood CTE and the daycare child care crisis in this state is impacting the state's economics and everything, which comes back to school funding. So there's issues here that need to be solved in this bill, but we can't so I mean, this is probably hundreds of millions. I mean, to build out these centers, we need pre-K, we need Kerwin centers too. So I just, we have to take a stand against the unfunded mandates. I mean, we are working hard to transfer some of these unfunded mandates back to our children. So that would be, you know, a reason I think that we do need to take a stand and oppose on the unfunded mandate.
Board Member Boozer Struthers, you actually do have more time. That was leftover time from Board Member Walker. So if you wanted to say more.
Well, I mean, I guess I just, I'd like to signal to our delegation that we are open for working on bills ahead of time. We know we share the same concerns about these issues, and working together ahead of time is, we just need to switch this dynamic, because it's just too many of them coming out of our delegation. Some, of course, have come from, you know, the whole legislature, but you know, the ones that I'm counting up have all come out of our delegation.
Thank you so much. Robin, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, then I'll take you to, if there's no other conversation, I'll take you to the next bill that's coming up this week is House Bill 379, which is Prince George's County Public Middle and High School Drug Detection Products. And what this bill is requiring is that we make available in every middle and high school, all the health clinics, the school libraries, and the school bathrooms, drug spiking detection products and drug detection strips. And although absolutely, we're constantly fighting drug addiction, and we have many different things even within the platform in terms of providing support and educating parents and students related to drug use and drug addiction. However, again, this is another unfunded mandate that to provide these things in every middle and high school, all of the bathrooms, as well as the libraries and the health rooms. So it would be an unfunded mandate, as well as in terms of dealing with just dealing with the whole issue. It is one of those things, again, that sort of takes us outside of our responsibilities for and our instructional responsibilities as far as providing the drug spiking products and our drink spiking detection products. And I guess, the thing that is concerning to me is that I'm not sure how this would work, because of the fact that if you had these strips or these drug detection products, generally speaking, most of the drugs are not being taken in the actual school. It's outside of the school environment. So that means the students would be accessing these things and I guess taking them with them to wherever they're going to ensure, so they could check whatever they're drinking or eating or whatever. So, it's not an immediate thing that we could be working with students. I think the whole idea of educating students and working with their families is probably more important and more productive. Anyway, but the biggest thing is that it's an unfunded mandate.
I was not paying attention and I missed the quick hand go up. So I don't know which one went first. I don't know if it was.
Same as
Boozer-
before. Boozer
All right,
Strother
Board
did
Member
myself.
Boozer Struthers.
Thank you, Board Member Walker. Thank you, Chair. So I'll take it from, the unfunded mandate and then also just the view of the actual content. So I listened to Delegate Taveris's panel with the committee, the education committee, and she said that this is sound like this is enabling to be able to access, I think, a federal fund to pay for these. So I think we just have to say that, if we support, it has to be supported with the amendment that there would be no cost to the school, no cost to PGCPS. So she has to get that in there. And then if she gets, we then work on the funds from this program. But that seemed to be her testimony to the education committee was really focused on the fact that there was no cost to PGCPS and that there's this federal pot of funds that's just waiting, for any school system to access. And so on the content piece, I am not opposed to this harm reduction product. It is a test of drugs and I guess drinks that could potentially have drugs added to them. Now that I'm reading it more closely, it is not a test of the student. It's not a violation of the student done by the school system. And to me, it falls under why we have Narcan in our buildings, and why, frankly, why we have condoms. I mean, there are products that can be utilized for prevention, and we would rather keep our kids safe and healthy than not provide a product, especially if they're provided for free through programs. So I'm not opposed to the content, but I would absolutely say it has to have the amendment. There's no cost to the school system for us to support. Thank you.
Board Member Boozer Struthers, I just want to add to your line of thinking. I did talk to the delegate yesterday, and I did confirm from the delegate that there were amendments made to the bill. So this is a request to look at the amended version that actually particularly dictates that this would be at no cost to the state, that this would be enabling for them to apply for federal funds. So Robin, I didn't get a chance to talk to you about it, but I did talk to her and I went through the bill and I couldn't find where it was an underfunded mandate. It looks like this is enabling for them to go after federal dollars and not for the state to procure new dollars or for the district to use its current operating budget to do it. I couldn't find that language. I did want to lift that up as part of the conversation. If you found different language, Robin, please correct me. But I do want to turn it over to Board Member Walker too, and then we'll allow you to kind of wrap it up for us.
Okay, thank you so much. I watched that same meeting and what I took away from that was that it will be enabling, but all of these bills that enable the request for funding doesn't necessarily come back for the lock of funding. So I do appreciate adding in that there will be no cost to the school system, but I think we also should think about the training of those. The logistics of those, because one of the things that I heard some discussion around is, well, if in fact you are a scholar who chooses to use this, you're going to take a drug, are you really going to test at that time? And that, so it's really about the feasibility and the ask. I'm all for having prevention, quite frankly, believe me. When we went through the fentanyl era, which is still here, we saw a lot of that. I think the difference in Narcan is that Narcan is
I
a
see.
reaction. It's reactive in order to, it's not preventative. And then just what data is around that to ensure that whoever is paying for this, it will be effective in what exactly we're seeing. So that's one. I think the other is the piece about the funding. I wasn't really clear on if it enables federal or state dollars, when do they have a lock on when that is and how much that is? Because this is for all middle and high schools. And so I'm assuming that we would need to do a feasibility cost of what that is, or at least a fiscal note, so that then they can pair that with the amount of money we're getting, or either shift the language inside of the bill. But I haven't seen the amended one. And so maybe those things are tackled inside.
I believe our expert, Ms. Welsh, has some thoughts here, so I want to make sure I make space for you.
Oh, well, all I wanted to say was that the bill hasn't been amended as of yet. So
Okay.
what's currently up there it does not discuss any bit of funding. And my concern is that the funding so even if federal funding might be available, does that put the onus on the school system to have to try to search out and get those federal dollars? Because even though that seems like a wonderful thing, if you're pursuing, and it would probably be a competitive grant, I'm guessing, there's a heck of a lot of work that goes into just getting federal funds. And then once you get the funds, a lot of work to document the expenditures that you're using with those federal funds. And so it actually a lot of times costs money just to get a grant and to maintain that grant. So that I am concerned that if the bill itself does not lay out specifically that there is funding and that it will be provided to cover the cost, I think we're going to end up being in a situation that like we currently are. Several years ago, a bill passed for menstrual hygiene dispensers, and it started off with within a certain time, like sometime in 2022, I think you had to have like one in each, at least one of the bathrooms in each of the high schools and middle schools, and now they're supposed to be in all the women's bathrooms. And when I just was checking on that, and it actually was due to a question a student had asked, I think a board member, their whole process, but it turns out that they're working to try to pursue the funding to be able to meet that mandate of being able to put all these menstrual hygiene dispensers in all of the women's bathrooms. So it concerns me that we'd be put in a situation where we're struggling again to try to meet this mandate and forced to almost take money out of some other pot just to be able to cover the cost if it were to go through.
Board Member Briggs, do you have any questions before we go to a second round? I believe my colleagues are requesting a second round, so I just want to make sure if you had one on the first round. And y'all, I apologize. The hands went up at the same time. Board Member Boozer Strother and then Board Member Walker.
Yeah, I guess the other question I have about this is, when it comes to this grant program that, I believe, there are grant programs already announced. I don't know which one Delegate Taveras was referencing, but certainly a quick web search shows some. I don't know what would prevent us from just doing this. Like, I don't know why we need Annapolis to give us permission to have drug testing products as a preventative measure, just like we have Narcan. Like, I don't know that was in it. I mean, I know there's some legislation around Narcan and who uses it, but I didn't know if it prevents us from, I don't know that we have anything in our way from making this decision and choosing to offer these as PGCPS, because the federal government has at least a couple programs where they have said this is available for grants, just as Ms. Welsh said. Like, the grant program's already open. So I don't know that we needed Annapolis legislation if we had decided as a school district that this was important to do. So that would be another question I have for Ms. Welsh to add to the list of if there's any, but I do need to understand if this particular pot of money that Delegate Taveras referenced requires this. I mean, that certainly would be important to know.
Board Member Walker?
Yeah, I'll just jump right in. Thank you so much. as I was really thinking about this and the fact that we do want to be as preventative as we possibly can when it comes to drugs and our youth and education and all of the things, I'm wondering, one, if there's any consideration, it'll be interesting to be able to speak to her on it whenever that meeting happens, but with federal grants, the discussions about federal grants and pausing and all of the things, every day there's something new that comes up about it. But at current state, what's the thought of attaching ourselves to these federal dollars in order to fund something here? So if we are going to support a bill that's going forward, what do we have in there that in the event that federal dollars are not do not become available to us by the end of these 90 days or 120 days, whenever we're supposed to lock it for the next school year, then does it automatically fall on the school system? That's one. So maybe we can just talk to her about language within the bill for that piece. I think the secondary part to that is what Board Member Boozer Strother was just talking about, is what is preventing us from doing that work ourselves. I think with this, it could be the grant writing. I don't know the answer to that. It could be the lock of what it means for our resources, et cetera. So maybe one of the questions that Ms. Welsh can ask the administration is this preventative measure something that is also important to us as a school? The answer probably is yes, but looking at these strips specifically, is it something that we can commit to overall doing? I just would hate for us to say PGCPS is going to take that on, and we know our grant writing availability might be, limited as well. So we want to solve it, but we also want to make sure we can execute it.
Appreciate you, Board Member Walker. Robin, do you want to hear?
I just want to also say one thing about the bill is that it says that it would have to go in effect by beginning the 25-26 school year. So that if the bill passed, it would pass, we'd know by May that it was something we had to implement, and we would only have until July 1 to be in compliance. So it's one of those bills that's there's no way the school system would drop everything they're doing and install all these things across the, when we have so many other needs at this point in time for our school buildings. So I mean, that would be another thing to consider, that we're not starting on the 2025 school year, but to push it back, if in fact this bill were to move forward and need to be amended.
I know we've done 2 rounds of discussion, colleagues. I think I have the sense of where we are. Do we need to further this discussion at all, or should we move on to the next bill? I want to make sure I have the sense of the body before we move on.
I'm all set. Thank you for asking.
Okay, cool. Looks like we're good with the.
Well,
I'm sorry, Board Member Boozer Strother. I cut
Yeah,
you off.
sorry for that delay. I was just formulating my question, because the way I look at this, it's already a House bill with referral to committee. So it seems like I thought that it says here the next hearing is February 5th at 2 p.m. So in Ways and Means. So we have time?
It is in Ways and Means on February 5th for a discussion, but it's delegation tomorrow. So Thursday. Is that right, Robin? Delegation's
Correct.
Thursday.
Correct, Thursday.
But it's
I
not
think it's
being
fair.
held by the delegation. Like, it's already a House bill, right?
Well, all I know is I received an email from Chair Williams, and she specifically asked if we were planning to provide a testimony, and if so, she needed it by Thursday morning for their meeting, and it was on 379, 359, House Bill 370, 359. So, and maybe they're just attempting to get a better feel on where we stand as a system in terms of our support or opposition to the bill.
And I'm just going to go ahead and respond to that. So it sounds like Chair Williams is actually doing exactly what I just referenced earlier about us talking to each other more. So it sounds, so now, okay, that gives me better context, because we're not doing anything that would hold this from debate in the House.
Correct.
You're not. That's correct. Okay. I think we're good to move on this one based on the admin's recommendation. The
And
next
then-
one,
Okay, oh, I'm sorry, no, I
Oh,
was
I'm
just,
sorry. I see Board Member Walker's hand. I don't
oh,
want to.
I'm sorry.
It'll just be really quickly. I just wanted to know if we're using, Ms. Welsh, the position paper that you came up with last year so that we can have the bulleted, understanding as it goes back to Chair Williams. They did ask for a position, which I think makes a lot of sense.
The platform, you mean?
You had a position paper of if it was opposing or if it was supporting or if it was supporting with amendments, it was a document. And inside of that document, it literally had wording and you add in, it was a template. Maybe
Yeah,
that's
it's
why
our-
Jonathan's raising his hand.
I believe you're talking about platform. Is that what you're talking
No,
about?
number
It was a
52.
sheet. I'll try to go back. It was a sheet of paper. It was a template. And it was one that was for support. It was one that was support with amendments. And then there was one for opposition. And the goal was that when we went through things like this, so there would be 2 position papers that would now be sent out on behalf of this. So if it said oppose, we would have the opportunity to not just say oppose, but we would have some bullets. And it had a blurb in there already where we could just add in to give context. So that it could be read by anybody, the chair or not, on behalf of PGCPS. It was a position paper.
So I know I know what you mean. There's sample letters that give you the structure, like it's
There it
like
is.
the format or whatever, so that you know what to do.
Yeah, same one.
And it'll be very similar to that. I mean, you know, in any of these bills, even when we do oppose a bill, generally speaking, the intent behind many of these bills are very positive, and so we want to acknowledge that. We don't want to just come across like, oh no, we absolutely not. I mean, I think it's really important to recognize that because you know, these are the efforts of the legislators to try to make things a little bit better for students. So and that what you're referring to does have that, like a little blurb in there that does like sort of has the positive piece, and then it takes you through what you're going to say if it's more opposed. So we'll make a version of it. It'll have the same idea that you're referencing.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. Robin, how many more do you have? Robin, how many
No,
more do you
there's
have? for
loads. So I'm going to
delegation?
try to talk faster now. These two, I want to definitely get your input because of the fact that the actual request on these two. But I did want to also point out that we want to, so there's a hearing coming up on February 5th for the House Bill 370, which is the Office of Integrity and Compliance. And we do support that bill. And so that will be important to provide input at for that hearing. The reason we do support the bill is because of and you probably all know these. So I will not be offended if you say you don't need to talk about Ron. We know, and I'll be perfectly fine. So I don't want to waste your time. But I think it's important. That particular bill, it's recognizing, you know, we're not saying do away with that office because we recognize the importance of the office, but that instead it should really, right now the language in it talks about that it's an independent employee of the school system. And it really is sort of has been an awkward situation all along because truly that office, they're not employees of the school system, except for the fact that we do fund their salaries. And in order to ensure there's no conflict of interest or no problems, we feel that it should really fall under the county government, with the whole idea that they would have, the county could then, you know, they could be the ones that have the oversight of that office. And it could be even the Office of Ethics and Accountability, as well as providing legal service from their county attorney to support that office, which would be very helpful for the office. And then I think and because it would then be the counties, they would then incur that cost. And I know I'd have to get the final figure, but I know about a couple months ago, we were looking at probably $1.6+ million for that office. So that is a concern for the school system. And then on top of that, the bill goes into detail about doing a risk assessment, which would really, I think would be very beneficial for the school system because it would, you know, analyze and prioritize any potential challenges that the school system would have in order to be operating successfully. And then using the information from the risk assessment to develop the work plan, which would be in collaboration both with the school system and the county. And then it would also make sure that it was out there for the community so that they would be involved and they would, you know everything we're doing, as well as at the end of the year, a report summarizing all the activities to ensure that, it's very transparent of everything that's been going on, has been investigated within the school system. So that one is for support. And then the other one, of course, that we absolutely support is the selection process for the county superintendent, because that particular bill, and this is in our platform too, that we want, that was the Board of Ed that should be actually appointing the, choosing the superintendent and not the county executive. So that's exciting that we had that bill. And then one other one I did want to bring to your attention, which is a concern, and that is it's House let's see, House Bill 377. And that one is, it should be, yeah, right there. And that one is very concerning. It's, again, this is one where the idea behind it is very great. So there is also a state bill right now that's out there that we'll be opposing, that basically says that if you are, the employers will be required to provide parental engagement leave to staff if they need to take off to be at their child's meeting or activity at school or whatever, up to 12 hours. And that definitely is a concern for the schools. And this bill so piggybacks on that and does require that. But then it also says the employer will get a tax credit for every parent that ends up taking advantage and using their parental leave. And I think the important piece here is, well, first of all, the expense to the school system to provide that leave would be and the burden for administration and board members, because the state would be coming up with this certification form, and then the principal and board member of the district where the student goes to school would be signing off on the certification saying that the parent was involved in a particular activity or came to a meeting or whatever. And then they would all these would be accrued to determine how much leave the person would have, which means we'd have to set up some kind of I'm talking about operational, like electronic system where we're tracking leave now for this the parental support engagement. And then on top of that, we would that would be a whole nother type of leave, but probably more importantly, any kind of leave like that is negotiated with the unions. So it's not something that we just come up with. That's part of their negotiated contract. So that would be a concern. And then on top of that, we would then have the number one, we don't know for many of our employees if they even have children. It's not information that we capture. I mean, we don't. When you apply for a job and come to Prince George's County, we don't require you to tell us how many children you have. And so at this point, we're estimating there's 9,500 employees that may be eligible for parental leave, which would be approximately $11.2 million. However, that's just an estimate. Because we don't actually capture that data. And so it would be an undue financial burden to be able to do that, as well as if you're talking about your teachers providing the leave, you're turning around, and also your substitute costs that's involved would be pretty expensive too. And then on top of that, the next thing would be, so it says this bill says we get $800 every employer that does it. But the problem is, as a tax credit for any available employees that take advantage of this, the problem is that we're a tax exempt organization. So we would not be able to take advantage of that offering that the county is providing. So again, at this point is really just, it's an unfunded mandate. We just couldn't afford to be able to do that. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. And then I'll take you up real quick. Cindy, can you go up to the top of the bill, to the top of the spreadsheet, to just talk about all the bills that are county Board of Ed bills? I mean, not county Board of Ed, but Board of Education bills. So there's four different policies that are not policies, bills that came up related to cell phones. And what is really, we have opposed for all of those. And the reason we have opposed, and they all have different versions. Some are like you're opposing it because it's just it's all day long. You cannot bring out your phone. Or another bill might be you cannot you have your phone during instructional time. Or another bill is you can't have the phone. You must lock it up in lockable containers. So there's four different variations of this. But the bottom line is they're saying that you must develop policy to address whatever's in that particular bill. And we have opposed for all of those. I do know MABE opposes those, PZAM opposes those, and it goes back to, and it's in our platform, the authority of the school board. So it is the school board's responsibility to develop policy and determine how they want to govern their schools. And we do have a policy in place at this point. That we have spent time on it, and there's a possibility we might be making revisions to that policy depending on information that Mr. House provides you as he gathers more information from community and everything, and that's fine. But to have the legislators tell us what we have to put in the policy really it goes against and infringes on your authority as a school board to be able to do policy. So that's why all four of those are opposed. And then if you can scroll down a little bit, Cindy.
Hey, Robin, just one quick question for you. Do we have any more bills that delegation is going to revisit tomorrow? I know we have a couple more items tonight.
Only the two that I shared with you. And we did address these other ones that might be coming up in the future from the county.
Okay.
So the rest of these are just ones that will be coming up shortly. I did want to get though your feel on these next three bills, which is Senate Bill 109, which has to do with ethics training and then publishing that you have completed the ethics training. I put support, and the reason I did put support is, first of all, we do. So I don't know all the training you do as board members. I know you do a good amount of training, but we also had a bill that passed, I think it was House Bill 1079, that laid out very specifically all the different kinds of trainings that you have to do. So professional development based on previous laws, the previous bill is an important piece for board members to be able to do, as well as you have to then supposed to put your professional development disclosure form on the website that says what trainings you've had. And that's all from a previous bill. So if this is saying that you should do some training related to bias, and then you should have it posted, well, you all are required to do it anyway, as well as we do offer the discrimination course that's a Safe Schools course that talks about bias and would fall under that category. So I felt like it wasn't really requiring very much of anything different than what you have to do. And if you think differently, that's fine, but that's why I put support. And then the other one is a publication of contact information. So, and that you already have a web page where you do provide information about each board member, and they're talking about then how board members can contact you from, and not your personal information, but from the standpoint of through the board office, like maybe and I know you make available your board email address and the board telephone number. What number are they? I guess and I really don't even know how internally you operate, as if it's the calls come into the office and then you're sent the information, or you actually have it through your cell phone. But those things that Bill's requiring, and I feel like you in the past anyway, you've been always make the effort to ensure that your constituents know how to get in touch with you when they want to contact you. So I felt that was really in line with where you were. And then the other one had to do with ethics law compliance certification, which would require, some training, and then it just certifies that you've done that training. And we do have a pretty extensive ethics regulations policy that goes into great detail. And that's an important policy. We often have many questions that relate to that policy in operations. So I felt like that was also valuable. So if you think differently in any of those three, please let me know. I'm just giving you the best shot, but it certainly can be changed at any time. Are there any questions or anything regarding those three?
I appreciate you all. In the interest of time, I want to make sure board members, if you can make your comments relative to the ones that she's gone over. So we'll give a first round and a second round here so we can bring our comments together. That's okay with you. Board member Walker, I see your hand is up.
Yes, thank you so much, and I'll make it brief, and probably only need one round. Thank you. Ms. Welsh, thank you so much for all the work you do in order to bring this together. For the cell phone bills specifically, I think I just want to recommend that this also be one that's worth a sit down with the delegation, with the delegates specifically, or senators that introduce these. The reason that that's so important is because not only is it a hot topic, but there's a lot of parents and and community members who also feel as though these are core distractions, including our superintendent, who also has noted that they are distractions in classrooms. With that being said, I think that there's an opportunity for us, just like we talked about Delegate Tavares' bill, to also say, hey, we're opposing this, but we recognize where it is that you want to go. To that end, we do have a cell phone policy that exists that we want to share with you all in advance, which we should do in advance, because I think they're trying to get to the same end to ensure that we do something. And the reality is, I think that we just have to help educate them on what it is that we're doing and seeing where do they see the gaps inside of that right there, because maybe that's something worth just sitting down with. I think also from talking to some folks, some people might believe that putting in legislation also helps to protect the school system by way of a law. So I do think that it's worth another conversation, sitting down, so that we can help to shape the narrative that they have as they go on the news and they help to educate their own constituents, that we form a partnership on what this opposition really means and what the gap is that they particularly see in the policies that we have, or in the execution of it, quite frankly, because it might just be that. Thanks.
Thank you, Board Member Walker. Vice Chair Briggs?
Yeah, thank you so much, Chair Moss. I just wanted to say, I think, because I thought the point around the policy piece, I didn't want to let that go without the cell phone policy, without saying that I feel like this is really an opportunity for our lobbyists to coordinate with offices, right? That's an opportunity to say like, hey, we got 4 different bills. Let's get all of the whatever good stuff we agree with into a bill, get it back to us, right? We can look over it, we can confirm that we like it, or if there's other things we want to have in there that we think are important. And that all happens with the P&G chair and with Mrs. Welsh around any additional implications that have to do with department chiefs or legal pieces, all of those things. So I feel like that task is probably to our lobbyist, Miss Green, who is now going to be in Annapolis advocating on our behalf, and want to just say that we should all feel free to reach out to her too if there are specific things that we want to see. But we'll have opportunities to share those updates in this committee as well, particularly the things that you're calling out.
Yeah, I just want to flag for committee members, Ms. Green wasn't able to be with us tonight because she's working, but I am setting up individual opportunities for you all to connect with her over the next couple of days. But Board Member Boozer Strother, I want to make sure we get your question or comments.
Yeah, thank you. When it comes to the cell phone bills, for me, I think this is, clearly a Board of Education role. And I think that we really need to be clear about that. And we have been quite proactive with the policy that, Board Member Walker referenced. And I do think we can make clear to our principals that policy already says to them, you can, strengthen your internal structures around the, use of cell phones. But the baseline is students should not be using cell phones. And we already have that policy. And I just think that needs to be reiterated. But that puts, there's a lot of questions to answer. The cost of the cell phone pouches, if you just look at the middle and high schools, a pouch is like $30 a piece. That's $1.5 million. Is that an unfunded mandate for the pouches? Who's going to pay for the damaged pouch? Is that another burden on the student? The $30 replacement fee? We're seeing what other school systems are tackling. But I do think that, internally, we do need to be clear with our parents and principals that they have some agency here, and to move forward in what will help them have less distraction from cell phones in the school buildings. While I appreciate the sentiments of Delegate Long and Senator Benson around parental leave for parent engagement at schools, I do understand administration's positions on that, especially one is about Prince George's County employers only would be held accountable, and we are the largest employer, and all the implications of that have been outlined. And then I think Senator Benson's reads a little more in line with a little more global. But I do at this point in time agree with administration's position on those bills.
Thank you so much,
Thank-
colleagues, for offering your insights tonight on the legislative update. We also want to thank Ms. Welsh for her hard work. Certainly really hard work. I don't know how she keeps up with it all, so I just want to make sure we honor and recognize. You got one other thing, Ms. Welsh? I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry. I just wanted to say the other thing, I think that's an important bill that people are still in the process of analyzing. I have not received the feedback yet from our finance officer, Lisa Howe, but it's the Senate Bill 429, House Bill 504, Excellence in Maryland Public Schools Act. So that's the major budget bill that's impacting education. And there have been some significant changes in the bill that I think are going to be important that we are going to want to weigh in on. I do know that I think between MABE and also PZAM, they want to have strategy. They want to work strategically on this and ensure that whatever the responses are from both those organizations as well as from the counties, that they're aligned, because that's certainly more powerful than having individual groups saying this and this and this. Some of the big concerns have to do with loss of foundation dollars, that we're not going to see the increase that was originally promised to us, and that's a per pupil amount, as well as some changes within the community schools. And then also in terms of the whole issue of collaborative time for teachers and everything, and they were supposed to be able to provide expenditures for that. They're looking at holding that off and not providing the funding for that. So there's a lot of different things that I want to put together some points as soon as I get information back from Lisa that I can then send out to all of you, so that you can try to help, because the bill itself is like this thick. So and she's the expert in looking at that. So I thought as soon as I receive her information, I'd like to put something together so that you can all, have a chance to sort of look over it and, get an idea of what is the substance in that bill.
Yeah, Ms. Welsh, I thank you for calling that back to our attention. Committee members, I am going to have our team to send out we're not going to have time to discuss that measure tonight, but Robin and I did talk about creating another meeting just to be able to focus on that bill. Just to be transparent, Board Member Boozer Strother actually recommended that we have some protected time, given the nature of that bill. So we will have a doodle poll coming out soon for a meeting. It will not be in the regular cadence of meetings, because they're going to entertain the bill before our next subcommittee meeting. So I just want to, advance the public as well as you all that we will make sure we follow OMA to do that. But soon we will have a platform to be able to talk about that bill in detail, given the extent of it and the ways in which it will impact Prince George's County Public Schools. So I appreciate you sending that reminder up, Ms. Welsh. But if there are no other legislative updates and my colleagues are ready to move on, we're going to move to policies for first consideration. There are 4 items for discussion. Each member will have 2 rounds per item during the discussion, and each member will have about 2.5 minutes. We'll talk about policy 3100, which is investments. The chair recognizes Ms. Welsh for an overview of policy 3100.
Okay. Cindy, do you mind putting that policy up, please? So in our last meeting, we had a conversation about the investments, and you had questions related to, I think the 2 biggest areas that you were most concerned had to do with ensuring that whenever we're investing that in some company or whatever, that it's aligning with what our priorities and what our values are, meaning the board's priorities and values. And then a system for accountability in terms of reporting and providing some more detail in the reporting. So I did talk to our treasurer, who provided me with loads of information, and he referred me actually over to the administrative procedure, the AP 3100, which goes into actually great detail related to what are the authorized financial dealers and institutions, as well as what are authorized investments and what are investment limitations, which actually are driven by what the statute says. And so he was explaining to me, so I told him, I did say to him, I'm going to attempt to explain this to the board members, but if I don't do such a great job and they have loads of questions, would you mind terribly coming to the next policy meeting to go a little bit in more detail so that everyone understands, because it is important. And he said, yes, he would be willing to do that. So basically he said that they are, first of all, what drives their decision-making goes back to in the policy. If you scroll down, Cindy, we have in the policy, keep going. In the standards, it's in the standards, yes. Go back, the primary objectives of investments are for safety of principle. So they're looking at definitely protecting the capital of the overall portfolio, because I mean, this is excess money we have that we don't want to lose. We want to make sure it actually grows so that we can, be able to use it for more things for our students. And then liquidity, because there's times when we might have emergency situations, whatever, we need to be able to have those funds available so that we are able to basically get the money from, if we need to, from those whatever the institutions that we have the money in. And then of course we're always looking to get the maximum return. And so most of this is all driven by state law. And when you had talked previously, Board Member Briggs, about standards of care, of course, this policy does address that. And again, that's driven by what the law requires. But he said that this is in our administrative procedure, that that we have the limitations. So we have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 categories of investments. And they're either U.S. government securities, U.S. agency securities, repurchase, certificate of deposit and time deposits, bankers acceptance, commercial paper, and pooled investments. And so within that, then there are, of course, some of these actually do invest in a wide variety of companies. And I have received more reports than I ever want. I'll be glad to share any of them with you, because they list out, like, for example, they have the Fidelity Investment money market funds, and this is the government portfolio. So most of these are all related to some relationship to the government and again, it's sort of like, if you're just the average person on the street, do you choose to buy, invest in some stocks, or maybe for security purposes, instead you decide to purchase bonds, where of course your rate of return might not be quite as great, but it is secure. So you don't, it's not as risky, or in some instances, it actually much greater return depending on what's going on at that time in the market. But so then these reports that they receive actually lays out from the different companies and groups that are within the portfolio for that particular company. And they're looking at it every month. And then the other one is the Maryland local government investment pool, which according to our administrative procedure, that is actually, we have so you can have certain percentages of investments in, I guess, funding in each of these areas. And we have 100%, and it's with PNC Capital Advisors. And this has like loads of different companies that that particular pool actually is included in the investment, which there's no reason why you certainly couldn't have reports of that so that you could see. And then on top of that, we actually the policy, the AP itself actually talks about that they should be providing you with the monthly reports, that you should be receiving monthly reports on the superintendent is required to provide you with monthly reports on the investments. And they put together, let me see, it just gives you their fiscal investments, and then it tells, it's big pictures, and then you could ask more specifically for the breakout. But they have the total investment portfolio balance amount, and then they talk about the monthly earned income yield, and then current interest rate range, and what the current interest is versus previous month interest earnings, and then the average daily investment by fund, And then, I mean, and this supposedly you should be receiving this every month. I don't know, do you receive this report? Because it's in the administrative procedure, and he has it prepared every single month. And his understanding was that he was preparing it so that it would eventually get to you so that you could see this. And then you can actually request to have it broken out. But then they also provided this portfolio profile, which was as of December 31st, 2024. And it shows that right now, 23% is in U.S. Treasuries, 15% is U.S. government obligations, 4% is in supranationals, 16% in money market mutual fund, and then 6% in first-tier repurchase agreements, 2% in certificate of deposits, and 34% in first-tier discount commercial papers. So so they have loads of information, but his point being, number one, was that you should be receiving a report every month. But secondly, that as far as being able to invest in companies that have the same values as the board does, that is not an easy thing to do, only because of the restrictions, the limitations, and what you have to invest in. And that as being ourselves a government entity and what we're required to do, which is mainly driven by statute. And that was sort of it in a nutshell. So I said, well, I would, if they would like to have, if they have more questions, then I will see if they would like for you to come. But I did do a change in here because we don't have it in our policy. So I thought, since this is sitting in the administrative procedure, it should be sitting in the policy. And if you scroll down, please, Cindy, you should get to there. Right there, it says the superintendent designee shall provide the Board of Education. Let me get this out of my way a minute. This little square. Should provide the Board of Education monthly investment policy compliance reports, which provide a listing of individual securities held at the end of the reporting period, a listing of investment by maturity date, and the percentage of total portfolio which each type of investment represents. Hoping to get to sort of what you were discussing at the last meeting in terms of having, having a better understanding what's being invested in and better accountability in terms of how these investments are working. So that is basically the change that I had made to the policy. So I don't know, are there any questions? Yes.
I do just want to caution my colleagues that there can't be any discussion before we move the item along. So I do see your hands, but I want to move the item along and then we can have discussions. If there are no objections, the committee shall recommend policy 3100 to the policy sponsor for revision approval. Seeing there are no rejections, the question is, shall the committee recommend policy 3100 investments to the policy sponsor for revision? Is there any discussion? And I believe board member, Vice Chair.
Okay. Well, I just want to say, I want to say thank you to Mrs. Welsh for the detailed description. And I think it makes sense that now it's nice to know that there's a report that he's putting together that he should be sharing with us. And I'm happy that that there's the other piece that's tied to state law, because that kind of helps to encourage me that there are teeth, that there's some type of accountability measure that's, I'm sure, is built into the law. To ensure that whatever standard of care exists is there with any other officer. The thing I did want to say was, I know we were just having a conversation at our retreat about communication and what types of platforms that the superintendent shares with us. And that's, and I don't want to get really nuanced in this policy because I know it should be big, but I know we say monthly report outs. And I'm wondering if we could just add in some really kind of generic language around the platforms, communication platforms that already exist within the board, something along those lines, just to give context. Like, he sends us a weekly report, and it seems like that would be a perfect place where if he just had a link, hyperlink at the top of that, we could just see it. So he doesn't have to do any additional lifting, but we'd have access to that information. And it's a pretty frequent kind of standard operating procedure, approach to how we could do it. So I'm just wondering if there could be some language that's like standard, and then it's kind of a plug and play in there. That's all I have to say.
Board Member Boozer-Strother?
Yeah, I was along the same lines about, now, this frequent report getting, in compliance with that. I was thinking I wanted to know if it could just go to the OBAFA committee every month. If it's a public report, or that it just wasn't clear to me. Is this something only board members are supposed to see, or can this go to OBAFA as a standing item?
That's a good question. He sent it to me and I'm not a board member, so I can't imagine. I mean, we're talking public dollars. I would think that is,
Yeah,
I mean, I can't see, it's not confidential in any way. I mean, it's like, I mean, it's not personal to anyone or anything. It's really just, what are we doing with the money? That is really the taxpayers' dollars. So, I can't imagine that it isn't. I can't see why it couldn't go to ABAFA.
yeah. No, that's great, because I agree with board member Briggs that that particular communication channel allows board members often to see some things before they go public, such as administrative procedures. So that I think we just need to, maybe put some structure around it will help. And maybe that's why we haven't been seeing them. We have seen them in the annual report. We have seen some more detail. It's not like we haven't seen anything, but raising this question of values-based investing and having this opportunity to spend more time with these reports can guide any future return to this policy on that point. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Board Member Boozer Strother. Looks like there's no more discussion from my colleagues. I do want to make a correction to the public. There are only two policies that are up for discussion tonight. I misrepresented that when I made the last statement. We got rid of 2 tonight because we needed more information for the administration. So there are only 2 tonight. If there's no more discussion from my colleagues, Ms. Adelaide, can we take a roll call vote on this?
Dr. Morris,
Vote in the affirmative. Yay.
Mr. Briggs,
Well, I kind of had a question because there was one additional piece that I asked Mrs. Welsh to put in. So if this is including that, then yes. But if it's not including that, then no, so that we can have that added in there.
The piece that you just said?
Yeah.
I wrote in, yes, I wrote in, about the, I'm going to put in communication platforms available between the board and the superintendent. I'm going to add that to it.
Yes.
okay. Ms. Boozer Strother,
Aye.
Ms. Walker,
Aye, with those amendments. Thank you.
4 in the affirmative.
So there are 3 votes in the affirmative. Policy 3100 investments will be recommended to the policy sponsor. There being no objections, policy 3100 is being recommended. Now we'll move to policy 9354, board members voucher reimbursement of 9354, board member voucher reimbursement.
Cindy, you mind putting that up, please? So we'll just, I think we just scroll down through and then it'll show up. I highlighted the changes so that we okay, so the first change, so there was a conversation, and I think it was Dr. Moss who said, I really feel like we need to say the money that that we're not going to reimburse any mailers at all in this day and age. So I put mailers in there as one of the ones that you shall not incur any expenditures on. And then the next one has to do with this whole conversation of the elections and candidacy. So this is the language I put, because you all went back and forth and discussed this several times. So I want to make sure that that it was that was clear. So distributing, again, these are things that you're not allowed to incur expenditures on. Distributing flyers, mailers, newsletters, posting signs, purchasing advertisements, greeting, hosting events, or any other expenditure aiming to reach voters to promote their candidacy for a political office, and then within 45 days of the primary and general elections. that was in an effort to capture each one of the different things you each had shared. And then the next one, this goes to 25, goes to where board member Boozer Strother had talked about where you shouldn't, like, for example, if you're at, I don't know, a conference or something, and you use that as an advantage from a business perspective and you get reimbursed for certain expenses that really are what's really benefiting your personal business. So we actually have board policy, and I think I just put the wrong number there. I meant to put 109. I'll correct that. Board policy 109, which is financial impropriety, improper conduct, and whistleblower protection. And in there, it talks about fraud. And so I have any act of fraud in which reimbursements are for personal business activities unrelated to board related activities as required by, I should say, policy 0109, financial impropriety, improper conduct, and whistleblower protection. And then I think it might be the very last change. Oh no, hold on a minute. The next one, if you scroll down a little bit further. Cindy, if you, yeah. So then, so board member Walker, you talked about local and non-local meals. So I went through this and to try to understand, are we, I wasn't 100% clear. I listened to the video a couple times, but clearly what you were wanting, but I think what was in the definition is to say, well, this is the limits, this is your daily expense limitations. So if you're getting a local meal, let's say, because you're going out to lunch and it's between business meetings or whatever, and you're with constituents during a business meeting, then whatever that daily expense limitation is for lunch, that would apply for your local meals. And then, but the same thing would also apply then, because we do have language below that was there before that talks about non-local meals. But again, it would be that limitation. This is how much is going to be paid. Like, say if it's for lunch, there's a certain amount. So that's what I put in there. And then if you scroll down further, oh, wait a minute, did I miss? Go back up. I think I forgot to okay. To receive such advance, I did make a change also because you asked the question about mileage. Hold on, where did I put that? I spent, this is, if you go under standard mileage, it's the definitions, I jumped ahead. Okay, so if you go to, scroll down, here we go. So you had asked the question about why can't you be reimbursed for mileage from instead of always having to have it come from the Board of Ed to wherever you're going, why it couldn't come from your home to the board, to wherever you're going. And it actually goes to, and looking this up and checking it out, it actually goes to the IRS rules as far as being reimbursed. So you're not getting reimbursement for commuting miles, but you're getting reimbursement for your actual business miles that you drive. So then if you scroll, it says mileage will be reimbursed at the prevailing IRS standard. And then keep scrolling down, Cindy. And then it said, oh, it's right there. Mileage rate for miles traveled in excess of the round trip daily commute between the travel's residence and base location or designated service location. So unfortunately, it is not supporting what you had requested, only because this is an IRS rule. It's not a Prince George's County public schools rule, but it is that to get that kind of reimbursement would be purely it's non-taxable. It's it's just part of that reimbursement for expense, but that must come from the primary place of business, and then and not from your residence. So I did write because the mileage from your home to work or to the board office in your situation is considered commuting miles, and that is not reimbursable expense. That is to receive that would be considered like increasing the amount of money you receive. It's a part of, it would be considered like, part of your, like, almost like your salary or what the money you're earning. And it's not considered a reimbursable expense. And then you would be taxed on it. In this instance, because you're just being reimbursed from your home to your, from your work to wherever you're going, then it's a reimbursement. So I hope that makes sense. But I did check that out in the IRS rules. And then I think, did I miss anything else? Let me scroll down to the bottom. Oh, and then one other request was keep going down further down, Cindy, to near the end, under implementation responsibilities. The question was, what this is, it should be D under implementation responsibilities. Okay, number D. It said, so previously it said a report to the full board, and instead I changed it to full report to each board member each month, which was requested instead of the full board. So I made that change. So I think I picked up most of the changes that you had requested. So I'm open to questions or comments or whatever.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ms. Welsh, for this. If there are no objections, the committee shall recommend policy 9354 to the policy sponsor. Approval. The question is, shall the committee recommend 9354 policy sponsor? Is there any discussion? I believe Board Member Boozer Strother hand was first, and then Board Member Walker.
All right, thank you so much. I think we're still trying to solve for this 30-mile rule from the Sasser building. That's in it. Is that now deleted? Because I don't know if we made that up, because I don't think I heard you say that that's part of the that there's some other place this 30 miles from that headquarters came from. Where is that? Where did that?
So 30 miles is to define whether you're considered to be on a local trip or a non-local trip, which is unrelated to mileage reimbursement. Let me,
is that from were you saying the IRS?
No, that is not from the IRS. That I was saying, because the board member Walker said, well, I live so far away. Can't I get reimbursed from my home to wherever I'm going? Because I go to all these places all the time versus having to only go from the board to wherever I'm going. And unfortunately, the IRS is talking about for reimbursement at the IRS rate for being able to get that reimbursement. It's from your primary place of business to wherever it is that you're going that's required by the job. So that's the one piece. But then there's this whole thing related to the 30 miles has to do with non-local travel. So the expenses and other costs related to board members' attendance at conference, workshops, projects which require the member to be in travel status 1 or more nights in locations 30 miles or further from the board office. So they're saying that anything that's considered non-local travel is anything beyond 30 miles, then you're on non-local travel.
Okay, well, I think we've had some misinterpretations of the past, because Annapolis is less than 30 miles from the Sasser building, and board members who participated in what is required of us training of MABE, which is an multi-day event that requires overnight stay, have been denied reimbursement by former chairs. And so we've got to clear this up. Like, either we have to say excluding Annapolis, Maryland, or change the mileage if we have that right. I guess I just don't know if this 30 miles comes from external, like that's a definition of local and non-local, or if we made that up at some point in time. But we have to get Annapolis has to qualify, because we are required by state law to be trained, including with Maryland Association of Boards of Education, which holds these trainings in Annapolis for multiple days.
I appreciate you, Board Member Boozer Strother, for bringing this up. Robin and I talked about this prior to the committee meeting. I even asked her if we needed to investigate if we needed to change the work location of board members, right? In terms of board policy to be able to make this happen. Robin, I don't know if you got to do any more research, but you and I talked about potentially having the attorney to weigh in on this. If you were able to do that research, I don't need to ask Attorney Horn to do that. Were you able to do any more research around that particular provision?
So
And I know
unfortunately,
Board Member Walker has questions too, so I want to make sure I acknowledge that.
So unfortunately, I think I missed the point about 30 miles. I thought we were focusing on the mileage reimbursement, which is unrelated to 30 miles, you know, because it doesn't matter if you so you're leaving when you go to Annapolis, you should be reimbursed from the board office to Annapolis, because that's what IRS says. The 30-mile thing, so I did not research that, but I do know it sits in our administrative procedure. But I was under the impression that that is really sort of like the school system's choice to do that. But I'm going to have to check that out, because what board member Boozer Strother just brought up, of course, makes perfect sense. And in a situation like that, where you're going to Annapolis for either the new board member training, or when you go to the MABE conference and it's a couple days long, it's highly beneficial to be able to stay over there, because you get to meet. You get to interact with other board members. It's a very important professional and educational experience for the board members. So, and not to reimburse them is like, that's crazy. So that has to be included. I will have to check on that to see. I don't know of any reason why it would not be acceptable. That has nothing to do with IRS. I think that might have been a rule that we just put into place. It was probably what was in place for employees, which is a whole different situation in that regard, versus, although I will say that if I had been invited to the MABE conference, I might have wanted to stay over at night at the MABE conference, just because it gives you the opportunity also to talk to people in similar positions like my own, as well as to talk to board members. So I feel like what I will do is double check against some other board policies across the state. Because I don't know of a single, unless your board attorney knows of something, and they might, that would provide that restriction.
I'm
Yeah,
not
I'm
aware
gonna-
of anything. I'm
Okay.
sorry, Jim. I'm not aware of any restrictions related to that 30 miles with reference to the IRS.
Thank you so much for weighing in. That's what I wanted you to weigh in. Board Member Walker, I don't know if your comments are relative to this, but it is your time.
Thank you so much. Having been a board member who has been declined to stay in Annapolis, I am totally supportive of ensuring that we have language specifically around Annapolis. I think that'll be helpful for us as we enable these partnerships that we have. The thing I wanted to come back to was two parts, and thanks again, Robin, for all your work as well. How and who determines number 24? If we scroll back up to 24, I just really am still particularly concerned about this hosting events piece when it comes. I just want to know who determines. Is it the chair that determines that they think you're having an event because you might be running for office in election season? I just feel like that's a little subjective to the chair's decision making. And, this hosting events thing. So is it only because I do host events and I'm just so nervous about if there is a colleague that is really trying to do something in their community, for instance, Brandywine Academy, I definitely have to have that. We're having action happening. It's always political season. But if someone were to tell me, oh, she's doing it because she wants to run for office 5 years from now, I don't know how to defend that. So is there a form we're going to have to fill out, or what's happening there? And I know that this says 45 days into the primary and general elections, but when I look at that window and I look at my cadence of events, it runs into that. So I just would like to know who and how determines that number 24, if we could be particular on that. And then something that had a C beside it, it said to full board. I have no clue. It had a C, it was down further. I just put C and it said to full board. What was that about? Hold on. Here it is. Oh, yes. Currently we get, like I get as a board member, my monthly report of my spend. So is this saying that then Mr. Fitzpatrick, though, despite I get that, then Mr. Fitzpatrick also needs to send me that same report? Or is this an overall report? So those are the two questions I have. Thanks.
So the one that says the director of board office shall provide a full report to each board member each month, that originally said to the full board about each member's thing. And so I changed it so that you're just gonna get your report like you always do.
We get that already from cost accounting,
From,
from accounting, like a budget person sends it to me. I don't know who, but I'm just thinking that, I mean, unless Mr. Fitzpatrick wants to take it on, it already gets sent to us. That's it.
I just want to flag real quick to Board Member Walker's concern earlier, when we left last time, I did think
Oh, no,
a
you're
little
going in and
bit,
out. Is that
and
just my
the
computer?
language, and Robin, I should have shared this with you when we talked yesterday, but I finally came up with language non-reoccurring. It might, no, sounds like it's for everybody. Can you hear me now?
it seemed like
Can you
you
hear
were
me now?
reading it for me.
Yeah, just start over.
Yeah, my apologies. I did think about that language a little bit, and Robin, I should have shared this with you prior to the meeting, but non-reoccurring events might be language to help in that situation. I think your events are reoccurring, but I think your question is still relevant, but I did just want to just put that in the atmosphere. I did think about additional language after we left, and I didn't say anything to anyone about it. But I did want to address that, and we can solve it a little bit later. I know other board members have concerns, but I did want to
Can I
say it
just,
here.
oh, I'm sorry, can I
Board
just
member
ask one question? Are you
sorry.
suggesting that where it says hosting events, it would say hosting non-reoccurring events? Okay, I don't want to lose that, so, okay.
I don't know that that solves Board Member Walker's concern, but it was language that I thought about. But we can come back around to another set of questions while we ideate. But I want to make sure I get Board Member Boozer Strother and Board Member and Vice Chair Briggs.
So are you calling on us for second round?
Absolutely. I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to note that the board's internal audit office has the analyst who sends us our reports directly. It comes directly from, a deployed employee to have that I mean, it's my understanding to have that separation from the board office director, that there's an independent entity monitoring our expenditures. The other is that I think we definitely need to take a step back and understand this local travel, because my local travel has always been from my starting point to my end point, which is, I think, nearly 100% of the time has been my home. If my local travel started from the Sasser building, that would be like a profit to me. I would be getting 23 miles extra, to move locally. So I don't know if I'm mishearing something, but I just want to make sure that every board member is doing this the same. I'm seeing Board Member Walker's head shake. So that's where I'm beginning to hear some things that are making me think, I think we have some, we need to look at this policy and make sure all board assistants and board members have the same understanding. I mean, that has not been corrected by anyone in the 6 years that I've been doing it that way. So I'm hoping that that is correct. But it would be but in my case, it would be extra funds to me just to give me 23 miles of a starting point for my local travel in my district, which is the majority of my travel. Thanks.
Board Member Boozer Strother just told the public she doesn't need any additional money. So
That'd be totally inappropriate. So I think we need to get to the bottom of this, and we were having a very public and transparent discussion about
right.
it, because we are transparent.
No, I appreciate your comments. Vice Chair Briggs.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I think you all covered it, so I'm not going to say a lot, but I think that that's the point, is that I think we need to look into this a bit more. And then I know, Mrs. Welch, that we talked about last time, like who's the person who, I think this was what Board Member Walker was referring to, is like, who's the person who checks and says, like, does this fit or does this not fit? And I believe I mentioned Miss Simple as a potential. Did we ever land on that language in the policy? Because if not, then I think that's part of the process too, is like maybe we can kind of not necessarily pressure test it, but just see if that's the right place to go. Because it sounds like we're already getting stuff from the budget office, which now as I'm thinking about it, is separate from the audit office. And I'm not making the connection right now to like the budget, like who's the director or the chief over both, if that's the same person, or I don't think that is though. But so I wonder if we could just get some more information on that piece. Or also Mr. Fitzpatrick, maybe you could speak to that.
I'm going to recognize our board director, Mr. Fitzpatrick.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question? I was following up on the mileage piece in our current practices. I was taken aback by
Yeah.
some of the differences.
Well, I want to keep mine simple. I'm just saying, I was like, we were trying to figure out who's the right person to make the decisions for if something happens with the campaign, and was it a campaign thing or was it traveling for something different, right? I'm just saying, I suggested Miss Simple be the person, and then we were all agreeing that we're getting information already about like our budget and how much we're spending from the budget office. I just wasn't clear if, I'm pretty sure those are two different offices, but was just curious if you could confirm that those are two different chiefs for the budget.
No, the monthly budget account that you receive comes from audit as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, so maybe that.
And just to also clarify, it is my understanding that audit has clarified that the mileage for any of your events should be from your home, because you also get mileage from your home to Sasser. However, we use Sasser to calculate the 30 miles to determine if you are non-local and can receive overnight reimbursement, which is, I think, is where the conversation started.
So
Yeah.
if that's the case, then how comes Board Member Walker has not been getting that mileage?
Yeah, I need to go look at that. I didn't know that I get from Akakeek to Sasser. I would never have thought that that was a thing. Like I should have to come to meetings, or is that only for, anyway, I can take it offline just to understand a bit more, but clearly we need a little training on that one. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it makes a good sense for us to postpone any action on this policy until we're able to do a little bit more work. And so what I would need you all to do is fail, because we're in the middle of discussion. I would need you all to not vote in the affirmative here, so then we can vote to postpone. So Ms. Adelaide, would you please take a roll call vote on policy 9354?
And this is to postpone until the next meeting, correct?
Well, technically, we got to vote on this because we're in the middle of the motion. So we were in a discussion, so we've got to vote on this motion, and then we'll vote to postpone because we're in the middle of the motion.
Okay, so this motion is to send it for public comments. All right, Dr.
Absolutely.
Moss?
No.
Mr. Briggs?
Oh.
Ms. Boozer-Strother?
No.
Ms. Walker?
No, no.
4 in the negative, motion fails. So the next motion would be to postpone until the next board meeting, or
The next committee meeting?
To the next policy and
next
governance
meeting?
committee.
Okay, awesome.
So the
Dr.
question
Moss?
is, shall the committee postpone policy 9354? And yes.
Thank you. Mr. Briggs?
Yes.
Ms. Boozer-Strother?
Yes.
Ms. Walker?
Yes, with the action that we just talked about. Right.
4 in the affirmative, motion passes.
Board members, we're going to move forward for policies for second consideration, which are ones that are moving to public comment. I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry, but I will tell you that when I was reviewing the video last time for this meeting, from the previous meeting, we had so many different odds and conversations going all over the place. And then one board member might say, well, I think it should be this. And then another board member says this, that we never, a lot of times end up saying, this is what we're wanting, or this is what we're checking. So I just want to double check to make sure as we go out, because this has been a conversation. So right now there's language in this policy that talks about if there's any questions regarding whether an expense is covered under these provisions, then it would go to the full board. Previously, the language here said it went to the chair of the board. But instead of sending it to one person, it would go to the full board to discuss. And then if they have a question related to whether or not it really falls within what it should be, is it something that's allowed, it would actually go to the ethics panel. So now, are you saying you want all that taken out and you want it all to just go to internal audit? Because then I will check with them, but I was revising it to reflect what you previously had, only instead of just the chair of the board making the decision, it would actually be the full board would vote on whether or not this was an expense that was covered under the provisions of this policy.
Ms. Walsh, I want to ask you a quick question. In the interest of time, is it possible for the board members with those concerns to check in with you individually before we move forward to make sure we appropriately codify? Is that okay with you, or do you need that clarification now?
Well, just as long as they do.
Okay.
As long as I get, I mean, but the thing is, it's really a committee decision here because each board member can tell me something, but I really look to hear what you as a committee have decided, because I think that's important. So and I know I'm sorry to waste the time, but I just felt like I want to make sure, because this whole conversation came up with this internal audit. I get it now. I'm going to change this, that the internal audit shall provide the report that each member receives each month. But as far as the actual questions about expenses, it was originally the board chair, and now I had it to go to the full board. So I wanted to make sure that we're on the same page with that. And then my other question is, are we good with, we're definitely about adding some language specific around Annapolis and that whole 30-mile thing. I will research that and see what we can put in there. And then I will add hosting non-recurring events under the part about the campaigns. I just want to make sure those are the changes you want to see.
I don't know that fully encompasses. I don't want to speak for one of my colleagues, but they shook their head when I asked this question earlier. So I do want to recognize Board Member Briggs, who had his hand up, and then Board Member Walker, who both want to add something here relative to this.
Well, no, Mrs. Walsh, I just wanted to concern and move us forward. So I'm just want to confirm, are you referring to in standard section 4 standards C? There's the part where it says, if a board member has any doubt about whether an expenditure is allowable, the board member shall obtain pre-approval of the expenditure from the budget analyst. I just want to be clear that I'm referring to Ms. Simple for that section. That would be the person. Beyond that, any other discussion, I just want to clarify if I'm throwing a monkey wrench in this.
Oh, that's where you're talking. Okay, so you wanted to go. Okay, got it.
Yeah, that's it.
Board Member Walker, I want to make
Thank you
sure-
so much. I was just going to agree with Mr. Briggs. I think Vice Chair Briggs, for the piece of us asking if we have questions on expenditures, I do believe that's the piece you're talking about, right? We should ask internal audit for that for sure. Whether we go through Mr. Fitzpatrick to then ask, but I think we go through the board office and let Mr. Fitzpatrick know so he can be in the loop, but it really comes from internal audit. So I'm in alignment with that. The other piece, and that's just for process wise, the answer comes from internal audit, but just process wise and how we do it. So she's not getting 18 emails. The other piece about, you know, I know what we're solving for the 45 days for the events. I just don't know how to solve for it, guys. That's the only reason why I keep on talking about it. I think that what we're trying to solve for, if I remember correctly, is that the Chair Moss was concerned that board members already seated, if they're running for a board position again, would be able to use this platform to hold events that they wouldn't have ordinarily held. My concern with that is that it becomes subjective, because we do a lot of things within our districts that might be something that came up last month. Okay. So the only thing, I don't know how to solve it, except for to say, we have to trust our board members and know. I ran too and didn't have experience in politics, and it was somebody else in the role, honestly. So I get where it is you're coming from. It feels, you know, like an unfair advantage, but I do think that whatever this process is, there needs to be a check. Maybe it's through internal audit to see if it meets the needs. I don't know. We have to have some check and balance that isn't dependent upon only the chair, I believe. And maybe it's internal audit based on like a questionnaire or something that they come up with. Because since I have a little bit of time, for instance, this one I'm doing now, I didn't know about a month ago. So I wouldn't even have been able to put it on a tracker of any sort. it was a need in my community. I got with PGCPS resources and we're knocking it out. And I would hate to not be able to do that work. And I don't know if that's for other districts too, but that's just what I'm thinking.
Yeah, you know, I'll be honest with you. I mean, since we can't solve for it, I'm happy to pull back on the language for now. Since we can't solve for it, I think it's, I mean, genuinely, we can't solve for how to like track this in a way that's respectful of everyone, right? You don't want that in the hands of a chair who might be political, who might approve it for some people, who might not approve it for other people. So, you know, I'll pull back on my language with that regard. Robin, I do appreciate the hard work you did on this. I do want to acknowledge all the work
Maybe
you did.
internal audit.
I'm going to follow up and
Sure.
I'll do more research about in all these areas and come back with some more language. So that's perfectly fine. I think we got to get it right. So that's, and that you're all happy with it. So
Yeah, I don't want it to become political though. So, because it would be creating the mess that I don't want to happen. So, if that makes sense. But I appreciate you all's engagement here on this. We've got policies for second consideration tonight. Policy 4113, community involvement in the principal selection process. Policy 5111, legal age of admission. Policy 9366, order of business parliamentary procedures. That's rescinding that policy. If there are no objections, the committee shall recommend the policies under agenda items 5.1 through 5.3 to the full board for public comment. I'm sorry, Ms. Welsh.
no,
What you
keep
got?
talking. I just wanted to, I wanted to give a little bit of background real quick on the rescission so that everyone's clear, because a lot of times there's questions about why do we get rid of, why are we rescinding a policy? And the issue is that particular policy is actually should have been rescinded back when the procedures were that were made by Michael Swift and you voted on. Once they were voted on, that policy then should have been rescinded, because that's all about parliamentary procedures, which is what was the purpose of the procedures. So that's why there's a rescission. And then the other thing, and I hate to do it, I know you want to get out of here, but I just feel like I have to ask this question. I made changes to the language about the community involvement in the principal selection. So you all had numerous conversations back and forth about, are we having one parent? Are we going to have one parent that it will at least be representing special ed on the panel for the interviewing? Or should we have language that says it's representative of the majority of the parents in the school system in that particular school, whatever? I think, and then you had many back and forth conversations. So first I want to say that the whole reason we're even having this conversation was because we've probably received at least 4 different repeated public comments that kept coming up, which kept causing us to come back and look at this policy related to having a parent of a student with special needs, receiving special ed services or 504 services, at least be make every effort to try to have a parent, at least, well, they wanted 2, but at least we at one point had decided on 1 parent. So I feel like maybe, and then at the very end, I think board member Walker then said, oh, so we're talking now about having 1 parent who is going to be that represents us special ed students. So I had so many different things. So I changed the language, and we can change it again, but it says the superintendent designee shall be responsible, and designee really refers to HR, shall be responsible for identifying the student population demographics of the school. The stakeholders shall be representative of the demographic of the school student population, and when possible, at least one of the stakeholders shall be a parent of a student receiving special education or Section 504 services. So I put that in so that that it's referencing, you really want that panel representative of your student population, those parents. But generally speaking, if you just have that language, special ed students generally make up maybe 10% of a school. So they're actually one of the smallest percentage of student population. And that language, if you're saying it's representative of your student population, and you're only getting 4 of them, there's a high probability you wouldn't have a parent of a special ed student. So that's why I include that language, but I certainly can change that language too. But I want to make sure you're okay with it.
Appreciate you. Board members, do you have any discussion on any of these items before we move forward with voting on them? Vice Chair Briggs?
Yeah, thank you so much, Chair Moss. Mrs. Welsh, I think the language, I feel like you could probably develop this, like if there's some way to say, there's some way to essentially say in legal terms, like unless it disproportionately impacts the, like the special education population, something along those lines, where it's like, it's clear that the intent of the policy is that we're assuming that it'll be not necessarily, well, I don't want to say equal representation of special education 504, but that they're definitely represented, like, in the group. So the goal is, like, we're following this process unless there's like a circumstance where that's just not possible, and whatever language would fit in there. And I'm sure you probably could pull like some like, sample language or some statutory or legal language, like, that just kind of gets at the point that we're saying, like, we want the special education population to not be like disproportionate or to be not represented at all. And that's the alternative to that standard not working, is when something like that happens. Does that make sense?
So, are you saying I add that in addition to what's already there, or take out what I have and
I like what you had, and I think if we're assuming that if the shoe fit, if the school had a population, I get what you're saying. On average, the special education population is normally going to be low. It's going to be about 10%. So it's probably rare that would happen. But I do think that there was other parts to what we discussed last time, which is like, we wanted to also reflect the community, which is, I think, the other piece to it. So I don't want to take all of that out, but I don't want to disproportionately impact special education. So I'm just trying to figure a way to kind of get both in there. And that's the point I'm trying to make. So that's the point, whatever that language sounds like, or I'm sure my colleagues will have other things to suggest.
Yeah, Board Member Boozer-Strother?
Thanks. Yeah, I think our sentiments were that when possible would be the words to remove, then at least one of the stakeholders shall be a parent of a student receiving special education or Section 504 services, feels more definitive. And I think that puts, although we know the AP does kind of like a call to parents, like, hey, sign up if you're interested. But I think it puts some more on the managers of this process to be more proactive about, selection, that they would see that none of the applicants have identified themselves as being a parent of a special education student. So they would seek assistance in making sure that there is a parent, so,
Okay. Or take one
that's,
possible.
yeah, because we're saying you have to have at least one. And we know that it would be highly unlikely that there wouldn't be at least one or more well-known parents within a school community very active around special education, because that's just also very typical, is, our parents of special education needs students are often very involved in their school. So I don't think it's the stretch that I don't think it should be a huge stretch in most cases from my experience. So that would be the words I would remove, is that when possible kind of gives an option. And then I do like that you added the part afterwards. I think that captured what we were thinking as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Board Member Boozer-Strother. I think you get to some of what Vice Chair Briggs was getting to, removing the when possible. Board Member Walker?
Oh, no. So I think I recall that I'm saying, oh, no, because I don't want it to be opposite, but I believe that the where possible was absolutely intentional. And the reason is because the discussion that we were having, can you stop just for 1 second real quick, please? The discussion that we were having at the time was with our HR director, chief, and what I thought was saying is that it's very difficult sometimes to even fill the positions. And so we wanted to say, like, where possible, so it didn't limit us to not now moving forward because we didn't have a parent with an IEP. But then what we also said was that the language around that would be intentional, that we would leave it up to our wonderful HR department to use their best knowledge to make sure that we had representation from IEP and the population that was there. Rosaryville for autism, but they were just being intentional, that leave it up to them, which is when I thought I said the thing about not two, but one. But anyway, I think where possible was intentional, y'all. My bad. But I think with that, the discussion is to rely on our HR to ensure that they have the population represented and especially look for someone that is a parent of an IEP student to have on there when possible. Just reminding us about the discussion.
And you articulate exactly what I picked up from the video was that because she was actually the last person I think that spoke and talked about how we can't always guarantee blah blah blah. So that's why I thought, well, that would take care of that. But then she also said, well, we'll take on the responsibility of ensuring we understand the demographics of that school to ensure we're representing the student population. So that's how we got there.
Board Member Briggs and Board Member Boozer Strother, are you all good with this new clarification? This could affect how we move on this policy, so I want to make sure the two of you are good.
Chair, I defer to you to how you want to present this to Mrs. Welsh around what you've heard from all of us, because I do think some of them are contradicting. So that's my statement, is that I feel like that's what the feedback we just got from Mrs. Welsh was, that we're all saying different things. So if you want to propose something, but it's up to, I don't have any strong feeling about, I do want the special education population represented is what I do want to make sure.
Board Member Boozer Strother.
All right, that was a strong feeling. That was a strong feeling represented, because I do think removing those two words ensures gives us more assurances of that. I mean, it does feel like we moved pretty far away from this commitment to parents of special education students, that we are getting feedback that we are getting enough feedback that the principal selection process may not have been strong enough in this regard, that there's that we're getting feedback that that's a point of data, that parents are feeling that maybe there needs to be heightened awareness around special education, principal candidates in the interview processes, and a great way to set that expectation. So, I mean, I was on the side of that one of the four had also, parents wear many hats. Oftentimes a parent is not just one demographic representation. So, but that one at least had to have a child with special education services. I was on that side. I mean, I also think the data is there, and that's why I'm on that side.
All right. Board Member Walker.
Yeah, I'm fine to take out where
Right.
possible. I'm a fan
Okay.
of making sure we have someone from the special needs population there. The reason why I pushed on that was really honestly because she said that they have trouble filling it, and I just didn't want to hold up the process. I trusted that they will do their due diligence in ensuring it, but I'm happy to take out where possible and make sure that we have someone that's represented. Special needs goes long, not only with IEPs, quite frankly, it's an umbrella, but if we want to specifically have someone there, they can figure it out. I'm happy to move it.
Yeah, and we'll just actually Baldwin to make sure they address it in the administrative procedure too, because I'm sure they'll design an administrative procedure around it. Can we get a roll call on policies under agenda items 5.1 through 5.3? And we are voting on this particular policy by removing that language. So taking Board Member Boozer Strother's recommendation. So, all right.
Okay. Dr. Moss?
Yes.
Mr. Briggs?
Aye.
Ms. Boozer Strother?
Aye.
Ms. Walker?
Aye.
Or in the affirmative, motion passes.
All right, there being no objections, the policies under agenda items 5.1 through 5.3 will be recommended to the full board for public comment. There are no policies for third consideration, first reader to the board. The chair informs the public that the next virtual, we're adjourned now that the next virtual policy and governance committee meeting will be February 11, 2024. Please continue to check the Prince George's County Board of Education website for meeting information updates. Thank you all for joining a great discussion and attendance. To our viewers, thank you for watching. There being no further business, the time is now 7:09 and the January 28, 2025 Policy and Governance Committee meeting is adjourned.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Yeah, have a good night.